Yeah.
I think it's time for our interview. Hit me with a transition, Michael. Turn that transition up.
So we're very excited and honored to bring in a guy who's had a pretty busy week. He's been hitting the radio channels very, very hard. We got Chris Trapasso from CBS. He's an NFL writer over there. Follow him on Twitter at Chris Trapasso. Chris, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good, guys. Thanks for having me.
Good. Thanks for coming in, my man. So let's talk about the latest mock here. You know, that it feels like, Chris, that this draft isn't getting quite as much buzz, likely due to the fact we don't have the sexy QB class we did last year. But it feels like it's definitely loaded with some stars. I'd argue, really, that there's numerous Pro Bowlers at other positions in this draft. What really kind of has you excited as we go into tomorrow night's draft?
I'm most excited about how many defensive linemen we could see. I think it could be a record if we're going all the way from the defensive tackle spot all the way out to the edge. And because this class going into the college football season at that defensive line, edge rusher positions had so much hype, I wasn't sure if it was really going to live up to that hype, and I think it did, and then some. I mean, there was the guys, even Nick Bosa getting hurt, coming back, performing at the Combine really well, a little bit even better than his brother Joey. The guys from Clemson, Quinn Williams came out of nowhere. Jeffrey Simmons hurt, but I think he could still go in the first round. Josh Allen had 17 sacks at Kentucky. There's just so many good pass rushers that play on the defensive line. I just want to see how many go in the first round. I wouldn't be surprised if that number is in the double digits.
Right. So a lot of the discussion now, even though there's been some people doubling back, even a lot of trusted sources saying they're not 100% on Kyler Murray at number one, but it just seems to make sense. At this point, does it almost make too much sense for someone like Steve Keim not to take him?
Yeah, I mean, I think they have to go with Kyler Murray at number one overall.
Right.
I mean, just because of the fit with Cliff Kingsbury makes perfect sense in that we see and hear so much about rookie quarterbacks coming in. They have to learn a new terminology. Maybe they weren't under center, and now they are in the pros. Kyler Murray won't have any of that. He will be basically running the exact same offense with the Cardinals. Now, obviously, Josh Rosen, I think, could still be a good quarterback, and he can make all the throws. I think the athleticism that Kyler Murray can give Cliff Kingsbury, who, when he was the offensive coordinator at Texas A&M in 2011, 2012, Johnny Manziel ran for 1,400 yards, and a good amount of those were on designed runs. So I think he wants to add that wrinkle. But over the last week or so, a lot of what's been out there that they're not sure if they're going to take him. They love Josh Rosen. I think it's just to boost his trade value, that they want to at least get a second-round pick for him. And it would have done them no good to just come out 2 weeks ago and say, hey, we're picking Kyler Murray, Josh Rosen's gone, because all the leverage in a trade would have been gone then.
Yeah, so you mentioned Josh Rosen, Chris, and guys, follow him on Twitter at Chris Trapasso. What are you hearing now as far as trade buzz surrounding Rosen? Any possible suitors that are in the mix now, and what's the latest on that?
There's not really any definitive teams coming out and saying we want to trade for Josh Rosen. I think there's certainly teams out there interested, but it's kind of the polar opposite of what we're seeing the Cardinals do. That the Cardinals are coming out and saying we love Josh Rosen. He's come in to work out in the team's mini camp, and they've really praised him. But I think no team wants to come out there and say we love Josh Rosen. We want to trade for him, because they don't want to be the only team to be doing that. So I think the LA Chargers are a surprise team, and I really think it'll come down to, I mean, we're about 23 hours away from the draft right now, but it's going to happen on draft night, maybe after the Cardinals picked Kyler Murray number one overall. I didn't think that was something that would be feasible. I thought that the second that Kyler Murray is on the roster with Josh Rosen, again, Rosen's value would just plummet. But being this close to the draft and really with no buzz about a specific team, I think the team that maybe likes Daniel Jones but misses on him or can't get a Dwayne Haskins or even a Drew Lock, that's when we could see trade maybe for a late first or a late second round pick for Josh Rosen.
So we know Murray's going to go first at this point. It's pretty much assumed. As far as the QBs in the draft, Chris, who do you rank as your top 3 NFL-ready guys, and what's the slotting there? What's the rationale?
I actually have Drew Lock number 1 overall, and I know that I'm minority there, and I'm fine with it. I'm a big proponent of experience at the quarterback position, and to be a 4-year starter in the SEC, and to me, to be a player that improved, that started off very raw. He completed under 50% of his passes his first year. To improve every season in the accuracy department, decision making, he still can improve. Moving inside the pocket is not perfect in that area yet, but I think he was better as a senior than he was in 2017, which strangely in 2017, he threw for over 40 touchdowns in that air raid system. So he showed that he can really light up the stat book in that wide open system that Kyler Murray just ran. So he's my number 1 quarterback. I think he has the highest floor. I think he could go to as many teams and be successful. But I understand the hype for Kyler Murray because of what I said earlier, the fit with Cliff Kingsbury and how the league is kind of trending toward that air raid offense being almost the new West Coast offense, that, every team kind of has some kind of wrinkle that resembles an Oklahoma game or a Texas Tech game. He's my number 2 quarterback, but they are the only 2 that I have with a first-round grade. Wow. Dwayne Haskins I have in the middle of the second. I think he needs a redshirt season. I think he's not very quick inside the pocket. There are some times where he's good moving away from pressure, but I think his feet are kind of slow. And just watching him, I don't think in the intermediate levels and down the field, he's very accurate. I mean, you see 70% completion, and it's easy to think, wow, this guy is pinpoint accurate, but I didn't really think that he was. I thought a lot of that was a product of the system, a lot of shallow crosses, a lot of slants, a ton of bubble screens, a ridiculous amount of yards after the catch. So I didn't see a lot of great tight window throws down the field, but what he did as a 1-year starter, I mean, is basically, along with Kyler Murray, as good as you can do. So I think a team, maybe like the Redskins, and that's kind of surfaced today, that they're really interested in him, would say, hey, we want to take him, and we're not going to necessarily expect him to be the starter right away. And that would be the best scenario for him. Those are my top 3 quarterbacks. Kind of different from what's out there, but that's just after watching every single one of these guys throw, and just of what I evaluate at the quarterback spot. That's how I have the top 3 in this draft.
So, Chris, if you threw these guys into last year's draft amongst those quarterbacks from 2018, where would you kind of rank all of them?
I would rank them all behind the Big 5 or the Big 6 from last year.
Wow.
Last year's quarterback class was special, and I wasn't even as high on Baker Mayfield as everyone kind of turned out to be. But like I said about the air raid, I had some concerns about, is he going to be throwing to as many open receivers? Was he kind of a product of that conference just not being good on defense? But clearly just what he had to do, throwing the football as much as he did, taking the risks that he did, just throwing the ball through a lot of tight windows, that seemingly translated down the stretch for the Browns. I like Sam Darnold. I actually had Mason Rudolph as my number 1 quarterback. I loved him. So I think even him going in the 3rd round, I think he can ultimately be a starter in the NFL and a good one. And even Josh Allen, who was my number 6 quarterback, just based on, he had to go to a team that wanted to really stretch the field and wasn't as worried about completion percentage. I think in Buffalo with the Bills and the connection to the Panthers and Cam Newton, he landed in a perfect spot. And I still think, too, Josh Rosen can be a franchise quarterback. I would slot Kyler Murray maybe ahead of Josh Allen, just because I think he is more accurate and he does have some. I mean, I guess Josh Allen can, be a pretty dynamic runner himself. But, yeah,
right.
The only one that would be close would be Kyler Murray. I think Drew Lock and Dwayne Haskins would be much further down the board if they were in that 2018 draft.
So let's talk some NFL mock draft trades here. So yesterday you made a pretty significant change in your mock, putting Dwayne Haskins going 5th to the Bengals, who would trade up with Tampa Bay. Can you kind of explain how you see that playing out on draft night?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll either be the Bengals or the Redskins trading up for Dwayne Haskins. It is really hard to peg what teams view these quarterbacks as potential top 5 or top 10 picks, because again, it's not like last year where there's, hey, let's just get in the top 3 and whoever falls to us will be happy. The reason for the Bengals and kind of what I think would make that reasonable, they have 11 picks in the draft. They have a brand new head coach, Zach Taylor, was with Sean McVay. He's probably pretty progressive in terms of wanting to spread them out, be in shotgun with his quarterback, a lot of RPOs, a lot of yards after the catch, and obviously Kyler Murray would be the guy that would fit that the best. But if you want someone similar in terms of, playing in kind of that basketball on grass system, the next best guy is probably Dwayne Haskins if you're looking down the road. They still have Andy Dalton there. I don't think they're ready to totally get rid of him. So that's kind of the reasoning why I think the Bengals could pick him. And then obviously the Redskins just have a weird situation at the quarterback spot with Alex Smith hurt, Case Keenum there. They don't really have a surefire answer, maybe not even for the start of the 2019 season. And I could see the Redskins, even though Haskins needs a year, almost rushing him onto the field because they like making those big splashes in free agency or in the draft.
Makes sense. So, Chris, you also made another big splash there by putting the Giants taking Josh Allen at 6, them trading back to 13 with the Miami to take Daniel Jones. Chris, are you trying to tell me the Giants are finally going to take a quarterback in the first round?
Yeah, that is what all signs are pointing to at this point.
Wow,
that it might even be at number 6 overall. That's kind of been the one draft secret or the draft speculation buzz that everyone kind of agrees with, that the Giants like Daniel Jones the most. They like the fact that he was at Duke with David Cutcliffe, who coached Eli Manning at Ole Miss, and that their GM, Dave Gettleman, has had lengthy conversations with David Cutcliffe. I'm sure he signed off on Daniel Jones. I didn't see it. Most people don't see him as a first-rounder. Evaluators that are not in the league, and I'm sure a lot of teams don't have him there either. But I think 6 is a little bit too rich. And having an extra first-round pick, we haven't really heard a lot about the Giants then using that to move up. And there's always craziness that happens with the draft. So I wanted to just kind of throw a curveball out there and said, hey, Dave Gettleman loves the guys on the defensive line. He loves to kind of regenerate that talent up front. He did it in Carolina, and I think he's going to start doing it now in New York. And then at 17, with the Redskins in front of him, with the Bengals in front of him, I don't think he would want to wait and say, hey, maybe Daniel Jones won't be here. I think there's a good chance that he can move up with pick number 17 and some extra picks on day 2 or day 3 to get his guy Daniel Jones from Duke.
We're chatting with Chris Trapasso of CBS. Go give him a follow at Chris Trapasso on Twitter. Go check out his mock drafts at CBS. Fantastic stuff. So let's shift real quickly into an absolute wild card, hailing from the Bay Area. What in the world is Jon Gruden going to do with all these first-round picks?
Well, he has to address the edge rusher spot. I mean, the second that he traded Khalil Mack, which I certainly didn't like it at the time that it happened. I thought the easiest decision would have just been paying your superstar player his extension that he deserved. And he proved to be an elite player with the Bears, and he's going to be an elite player for the next couple seasons there in Chicago. So I think edge rusher is obviously the biggest need and would make the most sense at number 4 overall. But do they love Josh Allen? I don't necessarily know if that's the case. So they could go out there. They could go Quinn Williams. They could go Ed Oliver. Some type of pass rusher to help that team that clearly had the worst pass rush in the NFL last year. I don't think wide receivers out of the question, even after trading for Antonio Brown and signing Tyrell Williams. Neither of those two are signed to be in Oakland, if you look at their contracts, much more than next season or maybe 2021. So if they're looking at that whole 10-year contract for Jon Gruden, I think someone like Marquise Brown, maybe even DK Metcalf would make sense. They need linebacker. It's a team that, I mean, obviously they were one of the worst teams in the NFL last year. It's a team that needs a receiver, could maybe use an offensive lineman, but basically at every position on the defensive side of the ball, they could use an upgrade. Their former first-round pick, Gary Conley, at corner, came on strong at the end of the season, and we really saw him live up to that first-round hype. Beyond that, I mean, there's not someone that I think Jon Gruden and Mike Mack can say, hey, this is a future superstar on our roster right now on the defensive side. So they have 3 first-round picks, ultimate luxury. I mean, we haven't seen this in a long time, that they have their work cut out for them, but they are in a very luxurious situation.
Chris, who are we sleeping on in this draft? Who's someone that the prognosticators are undervaluing?
Man, there's a lot. I mean,
right.
I don't have the exact same views as the Mel Kipers and the Todd McVays out there. I respect those guys. I mean, especially Mel Kiper has kind of created this industry. Bender Irvin is probably my biggest sleeper linebacker from Washington. You turn on his film, and he could be playing against Justin Herbert in Oregon, Stanford, didn't matter, Ohio State, even in the Rose Bowl. He was around the football all the time. He well over 100 tackles, great in coverage, whether it be zone or if he had to run with a running back or a tight end down the seam, just recognizes and can read route concepts and quickly react to them. And everyone thought at the combine he was going to be maybe 5'11", maybe 220 pounds, run slow, not test well. That wasn't the case. He's almost identically sized to both Devin White and Devin Bush. Not quite as fast, but he ran 4.56, which is plenty fast for the linebacker spot. Very good at getting off blocks, efficient in that sense. He's not, leveling these offensive tackles and taking himself out of the play. He uses almost pass rushing type moves, swim moves, rip moves to beat these offensive linemen when they're getting to the second level. And with his speed, with the coverage ability, he just projects perfectly, I think, to the NFL today. That he is only 6 foot and 230 pounds, but that's really what you want from your playmaking linebackers. You don't want him to be much bigger than that. So I think Ben Burke-Kirven, 3rd or 4th round is where he's probably going to go, but I think in a few years we'll be talking about him in the same vein as Devin Bush and as Devin White.
Chris, it happens every single year. One player on TV screens across America falls down the board and falls and falls. Who do you think in the top 10 could be that guy this year, if any?
I'll go with 2 guys, one on the defensive side, one on the offensive side. Montez Sweat, to me, seems like the defensive player who could fall, and it really has nothing to do with his on-field performance. Certainly not what happened at the Senior Bowl or the Combine when he was amazing at both pre-draft events. The heart condition, we saw it last year with Maurice Hurst. Fell all the way to day 3, actually. We haven't heard those reports a day out from the draft yet for Montez Sweat, but he has a heart condition. It was cleared by doctors, just like Hurst was, but I think a lot of teams have taken him either off their board or, hey, we're only going to pick him if he's available in the 4th or 5th round. Super talented player. I think he could be someone that if this heart condition wasn't there, he would be in play for the Raiders at number 4 overall. He's that intimidating, that athletic, and was that good in the SEC for 2 seasons at Mississippi State. And then offensively, I'll go with the quarterback. My number 1 guy, Drew Lock, that there doesn't seem to be a ton of buzz about him a day out, and certainly you want to have a lot of buzz going into the draft. It's been all about Haskins and Daniel Jones as the second quarterback taken. I can see, and I said it earlier with Josh Rosen, I think the LA Chargers to me are a surprise team that could be interested in adding a quarterback behind Phillip Rivers. I know for a fact last year they looked long and hard at that quarterback class, but then when Derwin James fell to them at number 17, they had to pick him there, and that was arguably the best value pick in the entire draft. So I think him falling to the Chargers, maybe even to the Packers at 30, could they pick a quarterback?
Wow.
I can see Drew Lock being someone that we thought, hey, he might go number 10 overall to the Broncos, and we'll see him fall, maybe not that far, but outside of the top half of the first round.
Wow. So, Chris, let me ask you this one. Let's get you out on this question. If you could be a fly on the wall in a war room, give us your top 3. Who would you like to sit in their war room and just pick their brain, hear what's going on, be a part of the process?
That's a really great question. I would have to start with Bill Belichick, and it's not even because he's been an amazing GM on draft day and on draft weekend. He really hasn't been. If you look at, there's been tons of misses that he's had. The fact that he has always wanted to trade down and try to accumulate as many picks as possible to raise the number of hits that he has, if he's only hitting 30%, to not make 7 picks, but to make 9 picks or 10 picks or 11 picks. Being in that war room where he's wheeling and dealing and willing to trade down, and who he would identify later on. Hey, we can get this guy in a second. Let's do that. Bill Belichick would probably be the first guy that I would. I'm trying to think of other general managers, and it's kind of eluding me right now.
You want to be in there with Gruden? His scouts aren't there.
Gruden and Mac, that's a good one. Gruden and Mac would be a lot of fun because I would just love to hear their banter back and forth and to see, are they really on the same page? Is Mac happy with all the picks? Is he not? That is a really, really interesting dynamic. So those two, I guess. I can't really think of a third standout team necessarily.
Maybe Arizona just to watch Steve Keim sweat.
Right. Oh, good times. Well, hey, Chris, we know it's a super busy week, my man. Are you headed down to Nashville? Are you down there now?
I'm actually not.
Okay.
I have a lot to do writing-wise
tomorrow
night, and there wasn't really any need for me to be there necessarily. I'm not interviewing anyone, so I'm going to be doing live takeaways on CBSSports.com tomorrow night. Pretty much just writing my opinion after every pick and then updating the article.
Awesome.
So, that's what I'll be doing tomorrow night.
Awesome. Well, check him out, guys. You heard he's going to be reacting tomorrow night. Follow him on Twitter at Chris Trapasso. Chris, appreciate your time tonight, my man. Have fun tomorrow night. Should be an interesting draft.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys.
Appreciate it.
Chris Trapasso of CBS. Fantastic stuff from him.
So I love his mock, Dave. He takes some big swings, and as he kind of alluded to, he's kind of contrary to a lot of the major prognosticators.
Oh, yeah, big time.
Yeah, so love that stuff, man.
Yeah, he's got great stuff. Go check him out on CBS. They actually do a really good job.
Right. Yeah.
Almost as good as BigPlay.com. But,
yeah, right. Joe Drame.
Their stuff on, they've got a lot of draft content on there. And he's a big part of that. So good stuff from Chris.
Yeah.
It's the weakest transition I've ever heard.
You know what isn't weak? Wow, that was not. You know what's not weak, though, Dave, is hell no. Hell yeah, brother. Let's get there.
All right, Jay Bird.